Welcome to Cultivate the Ordinary podcast, curious conversations for the anxious, frustrated, dejected, and bored. I'm Travis.
And I'm Jessie. So often we're held captive by screens, schedules, and media that's mind-numbing and polarizing. This leaves us seeing dimly through a fog. We want to spark more imagination and a better awareness of God's presence in the everyday.
Join us on a fun journey of discovery and curiosity as we look at the ordinary through the lenses of joy, wonder, beauty, and hope.
From underneath the rug crawled a little bitty bug. She met it with a scream and I met it with a shrug. Gotta listen to my wife, gotta take your life, but I didn't feel a thing. But I had to clean my shoes some that night. I went to bed thinking it was either him or me.
Welcome to the podcast today. Really excited to have a good friend of ours, Danny Smith, who is the frontman and main songwriter for the indie band Wasperjaws.
Just the heartbeat behind Wasperjaws is how, yeah.
The stinger behind the wasp.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about songwriting and the creative process, about stories and storytelling, and, kind of the inspiration behind, what goes into how you write songs and music and kind of what captures your imagination. What I love too about Wasperjaws and your band is just, how here you are in your 40s and you go ahead and start this band with your wife and friends, and you're just taking ordinary moments and stories, looking back as you look back on your life or kind of questions that you've wondered or asked, and then writing songs about that, and then performing with friends, just having fun. It's super cool, and love to talk more about this today. Jess and I know Danny from probably 2013 or so. So about, Gosh, we're going over a decade on our friendship.
Yeah.
Wow.
11 years.
11 years. And what led us, we were in St. Louis at the time. What led us down here to South Carolina was we took a job at a children's home working with kids in foster care. And that's been a space Danny and his wife have been involved with for years.
Right.
18, right?
Probably around 18.
18 years.
I'm bad with dates and numbers, but
okay.
I'll trust you.
Okay. So we came down and we were then house parents in that role, and Danny had been at this group home for, at the time, how long before we were there? You were there?
Several years.
OG out there, so several years. And
I really don't know.
Yeah, so he was actually in a role of being our supervisor, to where kind of helping us with just game plan, working with the kids that we had in our care, and
a lot of hand holding.
Yeah.
All right,
you say?
so he just really had to come in when we couldn't handle things. That's what happened.
Danny, and a lot of this is born out of his experience, but was kind of to me this child whisperer of really tough behaviors that we'd work through. So it was kind of having a 911 operator on call for when it hit the fan.
Yeah.
And it did all the time.
You had a lot. Yeah, you had a lot of fan hitting.
We had elementary boys is what we primarily worked with, and so with, but the stories, of these kids and what they were facing, in foster care and all the trauma, and it's completely understandable, the level of fear and anxiety they would have had, and then put them all together with others going through the same thing, and you've got a recipe for the most unpredictable days, but a lot of fun. It's some of the most fun we've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, some of our favorite memories. I don't think Travis and Jesse and I can get together without laughing and just talking about old times and things we've been through, and I don't know, things kids have called us, and
right.
But as the guest on this podcast, I feel like it's my prerogative to also brag on you and say you guys were amazing, and every time I'd go over there, there was something going on. They were working on bikes or building a skateboard ramp, or just, I don't know. That's what those kids needed, and you guys definitely brought that. And I learned a ton from just working with you guys, and the energy that you brought to it, the passion that you're still bringing to that space really is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I loved it. I loved working with you guys.
Yeah. Well, thanks for saying that. And what's cool about our relationship to this day too is as we've kind of parted ways from that place of being together is now that Jess and I have been with America's Kids Belong, there's been some opportunities to invite Danny and kind of his knowledge into some spaces with foster care panels and things like that to where, he's been a voice kind of on a national stage here with stuff that they're doing too. So that's been really cool. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Danny, your family, anything personally you want to share about who is Danny Smith?
All right. Well, I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up at kind of a summer camp. My parents basically kind of ran a summer camp, and that made for an interesting childhood. It was I had access to a gym, lake, a fishing lake, hiking. That I just spent a lot of time, especially during the summer when my parents were busy, with my siblings and friends. And looking back on it now, I'm like, man, no, they didn't know where we were all day. We had to check in, but they were just I felt like I had a good amount of freedom, and I enjoyed that as a kid. Grew up, met my wife in college. We got married really young, had kids really young, and just kind of out of convenience started working with kids in foster care outside of Chicago, and did that for about 3 years, and then we moved to South Carolina and have raised our family here. Our kids are in college now, and it feels a little bit weird, like I'm doing things backwards, like you're supposed to be in a band and then get married and settle down, but I did it the opposite way on accident. I didn't grow up, I was, like, even if I went back to Kentucky, like, I mean, maybe now it's a little bit different, but I didn't grow up, like, as a musician. I didn't play anything. I didn't sing. I would have been horrified to get on stage and sing anything. And in fact, I remember one Easter, I had this girl that I liked, and she convinced me to sing just a line in a hymn for like the Easter play or something. And I don't think it went well, but I guess my point is that's not like I didn't grow up like performing. I never would have done that. And so that's been a very recent development. And I started by singing in front of people in church when the people who usually led the songs, I think it was like the A team was gone, the B team was gone, and people started looking around. They're like, I think Danny plays guitar, and asked me to play songs one Sunday. But really, that is where I got kind of comfortable being able to play guitar and sing in front of people a little bit. And
cool.
Yeah, I've always kind of written stuff, words and some music, but it's just been kind of weird. Like I'd say like nobody was waiting for a group of 40-year-olds to start a band and like want you to listen to their songs, but here we are anyway. So
here we are.
But there's something really cool about that stage of life, starting to write music, because like, second half of life, like you're done with like, people's approval and trying to build yourself up and all that stuff. You're just like, this is who I am.
Yeah, I'm getting more towards that. I do feel exposed a lot of times, and especially like, so some of my lyrics are personal, and I've just kind of gotten over that. I've just become comfortable with, here it is. This is what I was feeling that day, and I've always loved good songwriting. Like I like poetry. I'm not like totally into it. I don't read poetry all the time, but I love good songwriting, and I love like how people choose words, because it has to sound good and it has to be the right word for what the song's about. So I've always loved it, and didn't plan to start doing it, but I just wrote some silly songs early on, and it I don't know. It's been a great help to me to work with good musicians, right, which you guys know, Everett and Dave, who are both in the band, and then my wife Ashley is a great harmony singer and singer. But when I started like sharing my what I call very simple songs with them, and Everett would come up with a cool bass line, and Dave would make a pretty piano thing out of it and give suggestions on it and say, what about this for the chorus? That's kind of how this happened. I joke about me being the heartbeat of it, but that's how that process happens for me. And I'm so much better at like kind of maybe starting by myself and then collaborating, because I do still need someone to say, when I write something, I just don't know if it's good or not, and I need someone to say like, yeah, we should do something with that. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do something with this one then.
Nice. Danny's gonna play a couple songs for us one now and then one later in the podcast from their latest album from Wasperjaws called 9 Good Songs. The first one is Imposter. So Danny, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what's the story behind this song, or what's it mean to you?
I kind of introduced this one as it's kind of a weird song. I don't know exactly where it came from, but it's about a guy that has imposter syndrome, and his wife makes him kill a bug in their living room because she's scared of it. And that kind of leads him to a full-on existential crisis. And so what I'm going to sing here in a minute is just about kind of him describing some scenes from his life. And there's another half of the song that I'm not going to play because the song just goes on too long. We'll all agree with that by the end of it. But so it's the rest of the song is just kind of him going into this existential crisis. But the parts I'm going to talk about is a little bit of home life, a little bit of trying to fit in, and this is a guy with imposter syndrome, remember that, and then his life at work.
Okay.
From underneath the rug crawled a little bitty bug. She met it with a scream and I met it with a shrug. Gotta listen to my wife, gotta take your life, but I didn't feel a thing. But I had to clean my shoes some that night. I went to bed thinking it was either him or me. Well, I hope he understands I'm just doing what I'm told. I didn't want to hurt your friend, but I'm trying to be bolder. I know I learned a lesson, things won't be the same, and I even retroactively have given you a name. I'm not ready to say sorry, I wish you were here to take half the blame. My, when you look up to the sky and laugh, 'cause it's all you can do. By the time you realize you ain't got to worry, let's hope it ain't too late for you, my friend. Let's hope it ain't too late for you. Things were going good, I was learning how not to be rude. Yes or no, sir, please, ma'am. Thank you for the food, ma'am. Thank you for the invite to this fancy dinner. I appreciate your graciousness toward this lowly sinner. When I'm back this way again, I'll take you up on stopping in again real soon. Driving home, smiling, things were going right. Finally, but in the back of my head kept tearing. How do you do, Miss Wiley? Gotta shut that thinking out. Keep this momentum going, gotta smile, shave my neck. Keep my teeth from showing. When I got home there was a note said everyone's out of your league except for me. My, when you look up to the sky and laugh, 'cause the story ain't true. By the time you realize you've been hearing only lies, let's hope it ain't too late for you, my friend. Let's hope it ain't too late for you. My boss called me in, said you've been hiding in your office. Didn't know just what to say, so I just went back to my office and I sat there in my chair. Spun myself around and I smiled to myself about the thought that I'd found. Then I got back on the internet and read some more descriptions of used trucks. Staring at the wall and staring at a monitor. I should be cutting grass or an elementary school janitor. I could buy a little house, little piece of land, put this phone away and pay attention to my kids. When I left I found my boss said, have a good one, sir, I'll see you next week. Calm down, sir, it looks like you're in a hurry, but just what are you hurrying to? By the time you realize that you wasted half your life, let's hope it ain't too late for you, my friend. Let's hope it ain't too late for you. Gotta hear the album to get the rest of that song.
Love it. And we have a link for the album in the notes. Great song. Well, let's get a little bit into what's the origin of the band Wasperjaws, the name. You're the lead singer or lead stinger. How about that?
Both,
for a
yeah.
little? Okay,
definitely. Yeah. My brother gave me the name. My brother said that I should name our band Wasperjaws. And we had a teacher in high school that he was just one of these like gregarious people. He was a great guy. He would just call people Wasperjaws. I don't know what that means to this day. I don't know if anyone does. I don't know if it's a common thing for people to say. But I just know that he would call people Wasperjaws. And in Kentucky where I grew up, and I've heard throughout the Appalachians, I'm not sure if this is true or not. I just know when I was growing up, we called a wasp a wasper.
Okay.
And I can remember there was a time where it dawned on me, like, okay, I'm calling it a Wasper, but the people around me and at my college are not calling it a Wasper. They're calling it a
Wasper.
Wasp. Yeah. So I realized somewhere along the line that it's not called a Wasper, but that's what we grew up calling it. And so that's where Wasperjaws came from. But I would say, like, I think it was kind of like early on, like right as COVID hit. I was just writing songs. I had a bunch of songs written and that I would just play around the house. No one had really ever heard them. And then, like I said, I met Dave, who I call Tips, but he's an amazing musician. He tunes pianos. He just has such a good ear. He's always trying to tell me, like, that's what does he say, like Mixolydian and things like that that I don't understand. And he knows I don't even try to pretend to understand it, but he still wants to explain it to me very often.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still lost on it. But anyway, I love collaborating with someone like that because you need someone that knows this stuff. Like I'm writing very simple songs. So anyway, he's also very easy to work with because he has no like he's just down for whatever. Like, let's try this, let's try that. He's up for whatever. So early on in COVID, as that hit, we had been getting together and just like trying to play songs together and collaborate on some songs, and it just was really fun to sing with him. He can sing really well. He sings harmony. Like I said, Ashley loves to sing harmony, so we would start playing songs together. And then one day, just because it wasn't a joke, but we were like, I said I'm gonna text Everett and say like, hey, you're in the band now, come play bass with us today. And it was a Sunday, and he just texted back like, okay, I'll be there in a few. So we started playing, and we just had fun with it. And then it was like, well, we've got these songs, we should record them. And that's all we ever planned to do with it. We never said like, let's try to like play shows around. We don't really play a lot live. We've done some of that, but that's never been our intention. We just had songs, we wanted to share them with family and friends. So that's how that came about.
Very cool. You got a really fun and interesting story where a famous band got a hold of your album, and tell us about that story.
Well, my favorite songwriter since I was maybe in like 7th grade has been John Prine. He's really big in Eastern Kentucky where I grew up, so it's not like I was into something that no one else knew about, but he's kind of like the Bob Dylan of that area. Like, everybody knows John Prine. And as I moved to other areas, people didn't know him as much. And he's really kind of become a lot more popular the past few years through some events or whatever. But my plan was, and I told Ashley, like, when we get this album done, I want to send it to John Prine. I want him to hear it. And, I didn't expect anything to come of it, but I thought, like, how cool would that be if John Prine heard my songs? And he was actually one of the first people, like, when COVID hit, he caught COVID and passed away. And he was like that was one of the first like major, like, I don't know, like a first celebrity that I knew of that died from COVID. So that that ruined that plan, and that it really hit me in a personal way too when he passed away. It felt like someone that I was close to had died. But when we got it done and I got the CDs in the mail, one of my other favorite songwriters is Scott Avett, and the Avett brothers in general. We've been fans. We've seen them live a bunch of times, and I like their approach to music. I like their approach to family and honesty in music. So I said, I'm going to send this to Scott Avett. So I sent him the album, and I don't know, it was only like maybe 4 or 5 days later, I got ready for bed and got in bed, and my wife and I were just kind of scrolling on our phones, which you guys are probably going to have a podcast about not doing that. And let me say, I heard your other podcast, one of your podcasts. I don't know how many you have now, but I've listened to at least one, and the rest are on my agenda. And the chemistry between you two, I feel it in person. I feel it in this room right now. But there was a certain, like as you guys started talking and joking around, there was a certain, like, we'll just call it a chemistry.
Okay.
That I feel like I could feel through the speakers in my truck.
Cool.
Yeah. So
that's a nice compliment.
Yeah. And anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, my wife and I scrolling Instagram, and I scrolled up and I saw a picture of our album, and I'm like, I haven't put this on anything yet, or maybe I had, I don't
Right.
remember. But I was like, what is this? And Scott Avett had shared like the cover of our album from Apple Music on his Instagram, and said, I should know it. It said like, give this album some love and it will love you back. And I mean, I was just
That's
like,
unbelievable.
I know, I was dumbfounded. I was like,
I
Ashley, open Instagram. Like, I wanted her to see it on her own phone. And I texted my brother. My brother is always one of the first. Like, if I come up with like even a guitar part or like a line, I send it to my brother. He writes songs too, and he's got a good sense, and I trust his judgment. And I texted my brother. I think it was like 11 o'clock at night, so I don't even know if he saw it that night. I can't remember. But I was like, go on the Avett Brothers Instagram or Scott Avett's Instagram. So that really,
that's just unbelievable.
yeah. I told Ashley and like everybody else, I'm like, no matter what happens with this, we didn't plan for anybody to hear this.
Right.
We didn't make it thinking like this is our shot.
Right.
but I said, like, if nothing else comes from this, the fact that, one of my favorite songwriters heard it, and I guess he liked it. I mean, I never heard from him,
Man.
but for him to
Put it out.
share it, I felt like that's like a really, that felt
that's
really
like
good.
a Wonka golden ticket moment.
I know.
I mean, is that up there with birth and marriage and like?
It's above both
It's
of them.
above.
Like, who's? I mean,
More
we
surprising.
can clarify whose birth we're talking about, but
Your
but-
own birth.
I mean, I really was shocked, and then I
Right.
felt like, then I started panicking. Like the next day, I was like, well, I want to tell him thank you,
Yeah.
but I don't want to I don't want to be weird about it. Like, I'm not. He's gonna think I'm trying to be friends with him and be like, what did I do? I'm gonna delete that
Right.
off my Instagram. So I just I said thank you and just kind of like backed
That's
away.
a good play. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll never reach out on indie albums again if you're
Yeah,
not
but I
careful.
check his Instagram every once in a while. I'm like, I wonder if it's still on there. It is.
So when I think about you and your songs, and you've kind of alluded to this already, but you're from Kentucky, and there's a great line by a Spanish philosopher who says, "Tell me the landscape in which you live, and I will tell you who you are." I love that so much. I'm a North Dakota boy, and I think we there is this identity from where we're from, and that. So with you though, that really seeps into your music. So how does Kentucky? What is that identity piece that just is so much part of what you write?
Yeah. I mean, I've been kind of surprised how often it comes up, and even like new songs I haven't recorded yet, Kentucky is a theme. And I mean, I don't really know why. I don't know if it's because that's where I grew up or just because it's a great state, which it is. But I just love it there. I love so many things about it. I mean, it's got its issues like everywhere else. But I think it's something I didn't appreciate while I was there, which I think is a common thing for people. I moved away when I was 18, and I've never lived there since. But my parents are in the same house that they've been in since I was 5, and I just love going back there. And I have so many good memories of growing up in Kentucky. And like I said, there was a lot of freedom. When I was like 12, I had a little dirt bike, and I'd just get to ride it back in the woods and feel like nobody knows where I'm at. And I really had a great childhood, and I give my parents the credit for that. And my parents went to work at this camp, and the goal of the camp was to be a Christian outreach for not disadvantaged kids, but it's a very impoverished area. So it's to give them something fun and to share, the gospel with them. And it's something that they've always, that they're like the most satisfied people I know, but they've never done anything, like they've never chased money, they've never tried to be anything more than what they are. So I guess I can't separate that from the state of Kentucky, which I also love.
Sure.
But just going back, I just have so many great memories of friends that I knew there, and I find it really hard to write about things like if I couldn't write a song about us meeting and recording a podcast tomorrow, but in 20 years I might think about it and it could be something. But it's I need space between things. I don't know why that is.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a visual artist, but I know in my experience creating, you just have to. you have to be feeling it. You have to be in the right mood. You have to be like kind of present and not really worried about anything or whatever. What is that like for you? Like the creative process, leading up to the times you've written something really moving or,
I feel like they come out in kind of groups. What's the word I'm looking for? Not batches.
Increments?
They come out in batches.
Batches.
Yeah, like I'll tend to get 2 or 3. I just feel, and that's. I feel like I just get them sometimes. They just are there. Not that they just come out all at once or a magic trick happens, but I'll have like a 3 or 4 day spurt where I just feel very creative. Like I'm writing stuff down. I'm coming up with different things that I maybe hadn't played before on the piano or guitar. But I read a book about songwriting by Jeff Tweedy, and he's another. I used to be a huge Wilco fan, and he would talk about like putting the work in. Like you got to sit down and write every day. And I've read that from a lot of writers that are professional writers. Like you just have to do it every day, and there's going to be a lot of bad, but that's how you get the good. And I believe that. I think that's true. And I think if I would go by that, I'd probably write some songs. But I'm not a professional songwriter. It's hard to even say that I'm a songwriter because I feel like it just kind of happened and that's what it is. So I don't totally identify as that.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess my process, I keep a running note on my phone. It's very long, where if I hear like a phrase I like, or if I think of something funny, or if I think of something that like is meaningful, I write it down. And sometimes I'll just keep writing, and it'll be like 2 paragraphs worth. And so usually I've got ideas, like lyrical ideas are the easier part for me. I've got a batch of those that I feel like I can go to that. And but I'm not a natural musician. I'm really not. And I'm not just saying that to be falsely humble. Like I'm an adequate musician, but I really need to get something like going on the guitar or piano, and then I'm like, okay, this feels like, let me find some words that feel like this, and that'll get me started, and then there's no telling what it'll turn into from there. And some, like when I was writing Imposter, I had this piano, I was just playing on the piano, and I was just singing nonsense, but it sounded like the syllables were in the right spot, and then I kind of started writing words around that. And I like, Imposter's so long, it's too long of a song, but too bad because it's not supposed to be a radio single, so we were like, we're keeping all the verses. But I had so much fun writing that song, like this character in my mind. I didn't want it to, I was like, I want to write one more verse for this guy. So once I've got that structure, I love filling in the structure.
Yeah.
But every time I write a song, I think, well, that'll be the last time I ever do that. I won't get another one.
Oh man. So I'm so fascinated by the creative process. I've read a lot of books on this, and as a writer myself, and I would actually put forth that everybody is creative.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that want to categorize. There's this false thing of where, well, he's a creative, I'm not. Well, we would say as image bearers of the creator, you have to have it in your DNA that you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of it is that we either don't define creativity more broadly enough, or we just don't see that the things that we're doing are actually in fact creative. But just responding to what you said about some people talking about sort of this process, almost like exercise. If I do enough laps around this, or if I do enough lifting in terms of writing, it'll come. And it's interesting because it does seem that there is something about just you do enough and the process leads to good stuff. But there's also, I think I resonate more with when I read people that talk about creativity is almost this mysterious thing that almost comes upon you.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about almost having to obey it.
Mm-hmm.
We've all probably had times where like a light bulb epiphany moment has happened, and sometimes that's the most creative thing ever. Well, you weren't like sitting there even thinking, trying to create something.
Yeah.
It came upon, and you know what I mean? And so like that I find really interesting on how it's different for people. Like
and I have tried. Like sometimes I'll think like, oh, I should write a song about that. And that happened to me on March 28th. That's why I said I just had a piano thing that I was playing, calling that for years, because I was like, I want to write a song about that, but I didn't have the angle.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to, like, I don't want to just say like, this is about a basketball game, and Tom T. Hall's another favorite songwriter of mine, and he'll do that sometimes. He just reports the story to a tune, and I love it. And I did that in Hank Gathers, if you've heard that song. It's about a basketball player that had a heart condition similar to mine and died on the court. And I said, I just want to write his story. But it took me a long time to come to that, because for like 3 years I had it in the back of my head, I want to write a song about Hank Gathers, because I had such an emotional response to his story. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do it. And then finally I thought to myself, well, Tom T. Hall would just write down what happened. And so I tried to just in a straightforward way, just write whatever it is, 6 verses about this is where he was born, then this happened, then this happened. And I do love that type of song, but I'm all over the place right now. But it's about impossible for me to just sit down and write a song.
Yeah.
I just can't do that, and I have to, like I said, I have to kind of know what the angle is, and I don't know, and then maybe it brews around in the back of your brain for long enough, and then finally when it's time, you're ready to just get it out there.
Oh yeah, it seems like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like something birthed, really.
Yeah. And I know you've probably felt the same way. Like when you get that, it's like I can still remember I wrote this stupid poem about a dog that was supposed to be funny when I was in like 9th or 10th grade, and I still get that same feeling. Like when I've got something going, there's no better feeling in the world. You're like, I've got one. I've got one. It's fun.
And that's why that line, I have to almost obey this.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you have so much energy. I mean, Jesse is a painter or an artist and different mediums, like you've felt that too, of like, oh, it's just flowing, right?
Yeah. I mean, that the hard part is like, as we get older, we talked about this in one of our other podcasts, that, it dims, like your delight and excitement for making something. It just goes away. And, and I think when you're in a space where you're, or at least I'm speaking for myself, when I'm relaxed and, there's space. Like, I think you said that earlier. When there's space to wonder and to think and to put all those like sensations and ideas and visuals and stuff into, a place and just kind of see what comes out of it. And for me, it's art, but for you, it's music.
Yeah.
For you, it's writing, So.
And rapping.
Yeah.
And rapping?
Paper?
Like
freestyle.
A freestyle.
Oh.
Freestyle rapping. Right?
Yeah. No one's seen it yet.
I read one time that Neil Young wrote, I think it was like 3 of the songs on Harvest, which is one of my favorite Neil Young albums. Like, I think it was on Harvest. I'm not positive. I forget a lot of stuff, but he'd been sick with a fever, and like as he was sick in bed or coming out of it, he wrote these 3 classic songs. And maybe it had something to do with the fever too, but I feel like it's also like, well, but you were just sitting there with your mind.
Right.
Nothing else was going on.
Yeah.
And I'm bad about, like, I'd constantly distract myself. I think if I would just, like, if my phone would just break and the TV didn't work anymore, I might be the most prolific songwriter on the earth, but we'll never know that because I keep myself distracted.
Wasperjaws.
Yeah. But I talk to my kids about that. I'm like, I'm worried about you guys and your generation because you're never bored. I'm never bored. Like, if I'm like, have 2 seconds of boredom, I pull my phone out and I'm like, I wonder if anybody wrote anything funny.
Yeah.
And like you have to allow yourself to be bored to let your brain work.
Totally. That's we had talked about that another time where I think Jesse, you had said something like, I mean, boredom is the catalyst for creativity. It can be. I mean, it can also be, you can go into other things as well, but right. Yeah, we're not, people don't know what boredom is here in the US. It doesn't feel like it's like,
and it's one of the keys to creativity. And I wonder if you lose creativity, like Jesse, you were talking about, as that, like, it dims. Like, I don't know if that just naturally happens or if it's like you have so many other things taking up your brain, like your brain power. Yeah. Like you're worried like about how you're raising your kids and bills and jobs and all that stuff. So I think it's maybe a natural thing, but maybe this is a good time that I feel like I'm getting. I knew there was some creativity in there, and I didn't totally lose it. But I feel like around 2020, I started getting it back, and I don't know exactly why, but I've definitely had a lot of moments where I felt like it's back. I
think it's also responding to what you said too, of that feeling of that this last bit of inspiration. Maybe it was a song, maybe it was a chapter in a book, maybe it was a book or whatever you've created. It's kind of what I've read too about a lot of people that have the same exact sense that like, oh wow, is this it? But so that's such a it's an interesting that that's such a common thing. Like, what if this, is like existential fear of like this could be it. But also I think though, so it is interesting that that's so common, but also this idea that that we maybe it's grounding and humbling to know it could be it, and so maybe but
well, I won't get into it, but in 2008 I found out I have like a serious heart condition. I've got a pacemaker defibrillator, and that kind of put a little fire under me too, because I was like, I had some songs at that time, and I did record another album by myself, which I don't like as much, but I just felt like, well, if I die, like no one knows any of this. Like I want my kids to have something that they'll hear, like, because they were younger at the time, and it felt like I want them to know that I had these songs, and that kind of lit the fire for me to do that. And I don't live with a sense of urgency. I wish I did, but I do more so because of that condition that I have, and I think even this time it feels like, well, these songs didn't even exist, and now they exist in my living room, and I'm going to put them on something that's permanent just in case anybody cares. That's how it felt.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, I would say Trav, you probably had a similar experience, like when you were talking about writing Redemption's Echo, your first book. We're hearing Danny talk about just like, I want my kids to have, these compiled thoughts and stories and this message that I feel like is just inside of me, and I have to get it out. Like, I know one day I want something for them to hold and for them to know that this is what their dad thought and felt.
Yeah, no, I totally resonate with that. And I think, I lost my dad. I think often when we lose someone close to us, one of the first things we do is we start to look for all the clues of, the things that they left behind. And it's kind of this, it's almost like you're looking for the closest you can get to what their presence was when they were here. And so, that's why it's so common. And part of it's dealing with grief, but like, grabbing the scrapbooks and grabbing everything that you can visually and anything else. And so, I have that same thing of where, to me, it moved up the timetable. I was always thinking, I'd love to write a book. But like what you're saying, it just made me think like, I don't know. None of us know how long we have. And for the kids to actually hold something their dad wrote, that's, man, I mean, that's just spurred me like you,
Yeah, I think it's, that's definitely been, I guess, the inspiration to do all this stuff. And I totally respect what you and Jesse are doing. You guys are both very creative people, but not just creative, but like taking action. Yeah. And that's not my specialty, taking action. So I do, like, you guys inspire me in that way. And I know what a daunting task it is to try to write a book, and you've done 2 of them now, and they're great. And in fact, a lot of what you wrote in Shiny Eyes is, we had so many great discussions around that, about just art and why it matters.
That's right,
why beauty matters and things like
Danny
that.
edited the book Shiny Eyes, so
I helped a little bit with it. But I think it's just the thing about creating for the sake of creating, and it's not necessarily. I think I had this false thing where I was like, well, I don't want to perform, and I'm not doing this to show off, and that I needed to be more humble to not have that attitude. Yeah. And I think it took more humility now to put my stuff out there than it would to say like, well, I don't want to perform. I'm not doing this for people's praise. Like people have this weird idea sometimes about like, well, I just play music for myself or something. Right.
I know, but it's like you have a gift, share it. It's like, I mean, and that's fine too that you play it for yourself. But
that's another thing is like, and we've discussed this, is like, it's kind of neat to have somebody like writing songs about experiences that too. Right. Like I would love it if I had somebody writing a book about like us growing up or something like that. It's
Yeah.
and I think we used to maybe have that like more localized, like everybody had the bard or the singer that would write about what's going on here. And so I don't know, when I was growing up, it felt like the musicians were these other people, like that was never me.
Right.
It's these people that exist in a totally different realm.
Mm.
And so I love what the internet's done for that. Like anybody can put anything out
Yeah.
there, and they're saying this is about my experience. So I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah. No, you're right. The accessibility to create is huge, and then to hear it. Listen, Danny's going to go ahead and play his last song, March 28th, 1992. Go ahead and tell us about this song.
All right. Well, like I said, I grew up in Kentucky, and we didn't have any pro sports teams or anything like that there, and it's still the same actually, but Kentucky basketball is like rules everything. That's all anybody cares about. Football is starting to like come on lately, but basketball really is the only thing that matters. And so in 1992, they had been coming off some kind of rough years, and Rick Pitino came from New York and kind of brought them back into prominence. They had some great like hometown Kentucky boys, we called them, on the team. And back then, people didn't just come for 1 year and then go pro. Like these were guys that came and played for a long time, so you got to know them. And so this was like just one of the most beloved basketball teams. And I grew up like when on the playground at school in '92. I would have been around 10 years old or something, but I would always like argue I want to be Richie Farmer this game when we're playing outside. We just pick our favorite players and stuff, but I guess I'm just trying to explain like that's what mattered to us in Kentucky, and it mattered a lot. And that year, like they had a great season, and they in the tournament in March Madness they met up with Duke, and Duke to us was like these preppy kids and these rich guys, and we had these scrappy Kentucky boys, and it was just a killer matchup. And we had company over that night for the game, and my dad took the game very seriously too. And as it got towards the end of the game, he went in his bedroom to watch the rest of the game by himself. I don't know exactly why. I can kind of understand it because we were kids and stuff, but we were bought in. But anyway, he went back into his room, and as the game got towards the end, I went in there to watch it with him. So it was just me and my dad. And with like, I want to say it was like 2.3, I should know this, but like 2.3 seconds left, Sean Woods hit a bank shot to put us ahead by 1 point. And we're cheering. The game's over.
Right.
There's 2 seconds left. And then Duke had a player that some people might know named Christian Leitner. And long story short, they threw a full-length pass to Christian Leitner. He hadn't missed a shot the entire game. He caught the pass. He turned kind of a fadeaway at the kind of the top of the key and hit the shot as the buzzer went off and just crushed our spirits. And they show it every March Madness. They show Christian Leitner running towards the camera with his hands up. And it's just, it's if you go to a Kentucky game, half the people there are still going to be wearing shirts that say, "I still hate Leitner," for that shot. But I guess a few years ago, I just started kind of thinking a lot about that and what college basketball meant to us, and thinking about being there with my dad. And my dad had tears in his eyes after the game. And that's, as I look back, I'm just so nostalgic about those times and what that meant. And so I knew I had written a piano music, and I was calling it March 28th, 1992, because it was kind of sad music. And then somewhere along the line, I kind of wrote this down, and the way I wrote the words, I kind of thought it was so specific that no one would like it.
Right.
But I played it for Everett and Dave, and when I got done playing it just for them, like I'm about to do here, Everett just kind of looked at me and he's like, "Well, we have to record that." So I was like, "Oh, like other people think that's a good song. Okay, so we'll do it." So that's we did, and I've had people tell me it's their favorite song, and like even if they don't know what it's about, I tried to write it in such a way that it created that it if you know what it's about, it's very specific. Right. But if you don't know what it's about, I feel like it can still produce a feeling or an emotion.
Sure.
Which is what I tried to do with that song.
What I love about what you just said too is I think there's a great line by Frederick Buechner where he talks about the story of any of us is the story of us all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's something, like you just kind of said, like, you know, people that may not even know Kentucky basketball, maybe aren't even basketball fans. There's something about it, they're brought into your story or your experience.
Yeah,
So,
and that's one of the things I love about music too, is like I don't share many experiences with musicians that I listen to, but if they're doing their job right, then it'll put you in a frame of mind to remember something from when you were 10, because ultimately the story of that song is not really about the game.
right.
It's about my dad being up on the roof, making sure the antenna was pointed just right, so that when the game came on at 8 o'clock or whatever, it was crystal clear. And
Right.
that's a memory I have of every time there was a Kentucky game. My dad would go up on the roof, and me or my brother or sister would be either yelling from the window or the door, "Turn it back the other way. You messed it up," or "It's good. Leave it. Don't touch it."
Don't touch it.
Yeah, but that's more what that song is about. Just that experience. I'm hanging out the window, yelling to my dad. You had it there before. Try moving it back. Shut the window, son. It's freezing in this house. We're tuning CBS, Ma, so I can't close it now. In the eastern Appalachians, it was tobacco farms and coal. But down every gravel driveway, a backboard and a goal. You can't trust New York, but winning speaks real loud. And when everyone else quit, a few good ones stuck around. I know the preachers tell us hate kills and destroys, so I'm trying to forgive the way they done our boys. You may hear from some old timers, there's a few times in life when a man can be excused if he can't help but cry. I'm laying there defeated, looking at my dad. We had it there before, then they took it back. When he turned the TV off, it was silent in that room. If emptiness could kill, the whole state would be a tomb. Mama, I'm just lying here, I can't catch my breath. It feels like a full-grown man is stepping on my chest.
I love the storytelling in the song and just how you're just kind of captured by the lyrics, just brought into the story. What about what role does your faith play in your songwriting, or kind of in how you see being a musician, or where does faith kind of come into play for you in your?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that. I feel like I'm more confused than ever, but I don't write what I would consider to be Christian music, but I am a Christian, and that's part of who I am, and it just kind of is part of everything that I do create. And I've written more some very personal stuff. Like I said, part of being a songwriter and putting stuff out there is that I feel exposed, and it's probably not a good thing. So I'm not saying this is the way it should be, but I have some stuff I've written that I feel like is just for me. Like this is private, and I don't want to expose that. And I also have a fear of cheapening things that now I'm trying to write something that they could sing in church or that.
Right.
And I'm not judging any of that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but the stuff I've written feels so personal that I don't want to share it. There's other things I've written that I almost feel like I've got some stuff coming up. We're hoping to record some more stuff, some new stuff soon. We got a bunch of songs, but that I put questions to God in songs, and like I have a lot of things that I'm wondering about, and there's a line in a new song, I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, are you sure about giving us free will because this isn't working out that great? So I do feel like that everything I write that has to be a part of it, but the stuff that it's more serious, I'm at this point keeping to myself. And like I said, I don't know if that's even a good thing. So, but I want people, I'm a relational person. I'm not somebody that goes out and is going to like strike up a conversation and witness to somebody in the airport. Now, that might happen. I hope it does. But that's not who I am. It's never who I've been. And there was a time where I felt guilty about that until I realized like, well, I've got ways that I relate to people and I care about people, and I'm going to show them the love of Christ that way. And so I hope the way I go about my life and my music in general backs that up. I know it doesn't always, but that would be my goal. But it's not my goal to write explicitly Christian music. But I try to be honest, and even if it's a made up character or something that just sounds funny at the time, I have a real hard time like not being honest in anything and like music related.
And I think people are just completely drawn to honesty across the board. I mean, it's vulnerability, honesty, being real.
Open up the diary on you.
Yeah.
That's what everybody's wondering about. Like, what's in Danny's diary? That should be a song, Danny's diary.
Yeah. Yeah. So we really appreciate you coming and having this conversation with us. And, I'll be reflecting on some of the stuff you said for the rest of the day. As far as your music and, how people can kind of find you and maybe see an upcoming show.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, we've got an album called 9 Good Songs. It's a 10-track album, and if you just look up Wasperjaws, it's on all the Spotify, Apple, I don't know, YouTube. That I did a thing that put it on everything. So yeah, just Google it or look it up on Spotify. Would love to hear from you if you listen to it. And we do have a show coming up February 17th. It's like a songwriter showcase that's happening in Lawrence, South Carolina. It's called the Homegrown. So I'm sure if you Google that, you could find it. Or me or my wife probably have. I think we've both posted about it on Instagram. Instagram, just Wasperjaws, and we post some music there occasionally. And I thank you both for having me. This has been like the easiest thing. I've never been on a podcast before, probably obviously, but every time I get together with you guys, like it's like we say like hey, and then we're in some deep conversation about faith and creativity, like all this stuff. So this has been very easy. Like you guys, that's kind of the way you live your lives, and I love talking about it. And Travis, if you want to talk about Enneagrams sometime, we've gotten used to doing that together. So
yeah, no, that's going to be a future your second episode on a podcast.
Yeah, I think people will probably be sending in a lot of emails asking for like, when's he going to be back?
Exactly. The listening just spiked after this episode. So, but yeah, no, thanks for those nice words, and it's the feeling's mutual. I think there's just I think we both, all three of us, just when we come together, there's a spark and an energy, and the way we see life is really similar. It's been awesome having you on, and love your music, and keep on keeping on. So thanks again for joining our podcast today. If you like or enjoy it, please share it. It helps others to see it. Please leave a review. We'd love that. And until next time, we need some words to take us out. What do you got, Jess?
I got
keep up with that beard care routine.
Keep up with the beard care and be careful around bonfires and fireworks and other highly flammable things.
Just be careful in general.
Be careful in general. Actually, there's a great line that says, living on Earth has always been a dangerous way to spend your time. We'll go out with that.
Come up with an ordinary life manual.
Okay.
Be regular.
Be regular.
That's my
also
theory.
Important. Awesome. All right. Check out the show notes to follow Wasperjaws and where to find their music. I hope today's episode has inspired you to create things, use your gifts, and cultivate your ordinary in new ways. Have an epic day.